So Pratap, there's a lot to get through here, and I'm conscious of your time as well. But we haven't even touched on Tata yet. So let's after your period in Japan, you was the goal to always go back to Tata? Was that something that you want? Is that something that you aspired to?
So funny, Sam, you asked, when I finished NID, I wanted to get into Tata, and, for one reason or the other, it didn't happen. When I graduated from RCA, I again applied and met some people at Tata, even in London. And again, for one reason or the other, it didn't happen. So I'd already tried 3 times,
Wow.
So, because I wanted to make a difference to an Indian brand. And I had worked in Piaggio, I'd worked in Mercedes in Japan, I worked in Mitsubishi for a year and Mercedes after that. And I thought, it was time for me to try and contribute to an Indian brand. Tata is a brand I always admired. And again, a chance meeting with someone at a motor show, led to me getting a chance to meet Mr. Tata himself, this young guy who knew nothing really. He was, the gentleman that he is. He met me for over 45 minutes in his office in Bombay. And, I went there all sort of, oh yeah, I can fix this. And towards the end of the day, he asked me to come back and see him. And he said, look, young man, I don't agree with most of the things you said, but there are some things I really do agree. And, if you're willing to take the chance, we're opening a studio in the UK. This is 2006, Sam. We're opening a studio and an R&D in the UK. Would you like to work there? So, I said, yeah, sure. That's something I could, think about. So I went back to Japan, told my boss at that time, Olivier Boulet, in Mercedes-Benz. We had a studio in Yokohama. Funnily enough, it was also one of Professor Pfeiffer's last visits to Japan before he retired.
Wow.
And Mr. Boulet and Professor Pfeiffer said, look, Pratap, if you want to work in Sindelfingen or you want to work in California, let us know. Why do you want to leave? So I said, look, I want to do this for an Indian brand. And, maybe the biggest mistake I'm going to make, not taking your offer to go to Sindelfingen or to, California, but this is something I really find a calling to do. And they said, that's amazing. We wish you all the best. And they sort of, let me go happily. And that's when I moved in 2007 back to the UK. And since then we've been sort of at it for the last 13 odd years, Sam.
Pratap, what was the reason for them creating the studio in the UK? Because it's a huge expense, isn't it?
Huge investment, yeah. Yeah, if anyone knows anything about Mr. Tata, he's not satisfied with anything but sort of the best. And I think, when I met him in 2006, they had done a series of cars, Indica and some others. But I think he knew to be a really global level player, he would have had to attract global talent and also, get real access to global design and technology. And the only way he saw that he could do that was to set up a R&D in the UK, Of course, we have a lot of, business relations with the UK. The Tata Group is well known here. This was before, we bought Jaguar Land Rover. So like I said, I'm talking about 2006-07. So he wanted really access to the best people, the best technologies, the best design. And you're right. I mean, for an Indian company with a predominantly Indian market, that was a huge step to take in 2006, in terms of investment. But, he's that kind of person. And I think he went ahead and did it. And today it's sort of really helping, our company in more ways than one. A lot of our design work is run out of the UK and Italy, of course, as you know. And of course, we've strengthened the India studio. So his vision of sort of having a global level of design and engineering, that's kind of coming into play now. And don't forget, like I said, Sam, Tata Motors was predominantly a commercial vehicle manufacturer. And moving to cars is a very, very big jump. It's like making a grandfather clock and a sort of automatic wristwatch. That's the difference in terms of complexity, miniaturization, market complexity. So to make that leap, and I also think he saw that all the global manufacturers will be in India. So even if you aren't global will come to India.
Right.
So to combat that, he really wanted and he really foresaw this need for global R&D and design, especially. So, he's an architect, he's a trained architect. So he's got a great eye for design. He picks up things that most of us sometimes miss out on. And, I'm really glad that he had that vision, that foresight to do it. Like you said, despite the expense to do it, I think the cost not to do it would have been higher than the expense to do it.
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Pratap, just excuse my ignorance for a second, but the products that you are developing in the UK, are these in the UK studio, are these products for the Indian market, or are they other markets as well?
Yeah, so Sam, while I said, our market is predominantly India, but we don't design anything for India per se. Our design is basically global, because like I said, we are competing with global products in India. So at any segment, if it's a Hyundai i20, or if it's a Ford product, or if it's a Kia product, Kia has come into India in the last year or so. If it's a Renault, so the products are completely global that we are competing with. So that's why, we don't look at it as a sort of, yes, India is a geography, but in the design team, it's a very, very global approach. And it also reflects in our talent base. We've got, I think the last count, people from 13 different nationalities in Tata Motors design in all the 3 studios. So yeah, it's a completely global hands for an Indian brand. That's what I say. So for me, that's fundamentally important.
Pratap, I'm going to go like pretty left field here. Now, as I haven't been to India, but I have from Russell Peters' account of what the streets look like in Mumbai, like just sheer carnage, with like bicycles with goats on people's shoulders and just like savagery, tuk-tuks everywhere. I have a question. Now, why is it that, especially an Indian company like Tata hasn't developed a vehicle more suitable for that sort of landscape? And surely there's a market for it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Sam. When I say global, I don't mean that it leaves out the peculiarities of what's needed in India. So, for example, if I take one of our hatchbacks, we call it the Ultras. There's some things we've done that no manufacturer has done. So, for example, if you look at the clothing in India, some of it can be quite restrictive. So, if a woman is wearing a sari, or if a gentleman is wearing something called a dhoti, it can actually restrict movement, and of course the elderly and all of that. So we have the doors, and we worked with our engineering team to develop the hinges for the entire architecture, our small car architecture. Those doors open completely 90 degrees to the body of the car, of course in stages. But there's no car in the world which does that. So the kind of access you get in and out of the car is absolutely mind-blowing. We know Indian families are large. So all our hatchbacks are real 5-seaters. The middle seat in any European hatchback at the back has this tunnel going right through it. Transmission tunnel, or for even if it's for the exhaust system, there's a massive tunnel. If you sit in the Ultras, it's an almost flat floor. I think the tunnel is a couple of inches. So that makes that middle seat a real middle seat. If you've got any legs, you can sit there,
Wow.
So we do things which are subtle from a functional point of view for for our particular market, but we've seen that those benefits actually translate globally. So if we were to sell an Altroz in Europe or in South Africa, in ASEAN, those architectural benefits would actually help everybody. What's wrong with a proper middle seat in the second row, in a hatchback? We have another car which is under 4 meters. So under 4 meters, for example, is a kind of category that exists only in India. It's a bit like the K cars in Japan, which are 3395 length.
Yeah.
In ours, you get a tax break till 4 meters. The cars are basically get a 20% tax break. Okay. So those are specifically actually designed for India. And we have a sedan, we have a minivan, we have a hatchback, and we have an SUV in that sub 4 meters. I speak to a lot of our global colleagues in design, and all of them find that it's incredible how we design for that size. A sedan under 4 meters is unheard of. And by the way, the boot of that sedan has 419 liters of space. It's a sedan called the Tigor. It's a small sedan. We have a small SUV called the Nexon. You can get an entire washing machine with its cardboard box into the back boot, and the vehicle is under 4 meters. So we do some, that entire category, Sam, is actually appropriate and local only to India.
But Pratap, do you ever see like something like that's got a completely different footprint, like a tuk-tuk, for example? And I know some of the Japanese companies. I mean, Toyota, for example, experimented with these crazy sort of single pods that you would use in a city center on sidewalks and whatnot. Do you see India ever experimenting with vehicles like that in the future?
Of course. I think, Sam, I'll give you an interesting statistic. In India, 21 out of 1,000 people own a car. So just to compare it, in Western Europe, it's about 650 out of 1,000.
Okay.
In the US and China, it's around 800 per 1,000. So in India, it's 20 per 1,000.
Wow.
So you can see where the opportunity is to do various things. The car is Sam, in India, still a very aspirational product. I mean, people have to save up a lot of money to buy a car in relation to their income. So, it's not a means to get from A to B. It actually says something about you, as an individual, as it does in many other parts of the world. But I think in India, it's really more acute. And, which is why there's such a boom in SUVs, for example. SUVs is the fastest growing segment in India, as it is in many other parts of the world. But, if you look at the market segments, SUVs is outgrowing any other segment in India. Because people, when they spend that kind of money, whatever that money is, they want others to see. First, they want to feel good about themselves, and they want others to see that they're doing well. Okay. So yes, there's a motorbike, which we are the largest market in the world. I don't know how many millions are sold every month, motorbikes and scooters. But then the jump to a car is a very, very different, shift, Sam. And I think that's where the difference lies. It's some of the examples you've taken, these pods and individual pods, etc., are handled very well by scooters and motorbikes. But when you get a car, it says a lot about you and your place in life, in society, what your neighbors will think. All this is very important, and that's why I think to match that aspirational level, cars have to be a certain type of product. Very soon, Sam, for example, we are going to do a SUV which is just 3.8 meters. We showed it as the HBX concept in Delhi in February last year, and we are going to bring it into the market this calendar year. And it's going to be a very, very exciting product. So tiny footprint, 3.8 meters, but really incredible product. So
only available in India.
Yeah, for the moment, Sam, like I said, 20 out of 1,000 own a car, so where the market is. But I think there's plenty of space for us to grow. And also, I haven't seen, Sam, you may correct me if I'm wrong, if you're not strong in your home market, it's very difficult to actually be strong in an overseas market. You really need that domestic strength and that base before you venture out into other countries and other geographies. So we are focused currently very much at consolidating our position. We've grown from 4% of the market to close to 8.5% in these 6 or 8 months, during COVID, funnily enough. Because we brought a lot of new products to the Indian market, which are being, appreciated and liked, and design and safety are the two reasons why people are buying our products, so we're very happy with that. And then my personal view, Sam, is if we were to go into overseas market with an IC engine product, I think there would be very little to differentiate us. There's plenty out there, in our segments. But I think we have a play in the EV world, when we start producing more EVs and born EV in terms of architecture and products. That's, I think, when we can really make a step overseas. I would sort of look at it that way.
I think in hip hop they say you've got to be hood famous before you be world famous.
Man, hip hop always gets it right. There's so much truth there.
Pratap, one question on the Sierra. I know it was a big deal for you because the car was so seminal in the 90s, and you guys wanted to maybe pay homage to that. And the question that I had is, like, how do you revive an iconic model like that without just going down the retro route and still being true to the roots?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sam, when the Sierra was launched in 94 or 95, I can't remember exactly. It was like a spaceship. Like I said, around you only had the Morris Minor and the Fiat 1100, and bam, the Sierra landed there with this curved glass, and it was incredible. And because of that, it got this real iconic status in people's minds. So to bring that back is actually very, very challenging. It's a design challenge, and it's a brand challenge, because there's plenty of people you can disappoint, when you do that. So when we were thinking about it, we actually put ourselves in the skin of the original engineers, because there were no designers then. The original engineers, and Mr. Tata, by the way, that what would they have done had the original Sierra not existed at all? That's the point you start with. So, for example, I didn't tell the designers, let's go redesign a Sierra. I described to them a product, what it needs to do, because I could do that, what it needs to do. I defined that it would be on an electric architecture, because I don't think if Mr. Tata and that original team were designing a car today, they would use an IC engine architecture. They would have gone straight for something, out there. And, I said it's a way for people to connect with each other, but also connect with nature and get out of their electronic world. And, so I described the spirit of the original car without saying, here's the picture, now sketch it in, make me 50 sketches. Because that's when you fall into that trap that you can't break out of. And then as we went along, and like I said, I didn't tell the designers this is going to be a new Sierra. I described the product, described what it needs to do. Both socially and visually. And then slowly through the process, we sort of started bringing in some elements from the original car. So like this wraparound glass. Original car was a 3-door, which doesn't work very well in India. So we made this one 5-door, with the sliding doors, or 4 in concept form, but it would be 5. And, slowly we sort of moved the design team into designing the new gen Sierra for a new era. So that's how we did it. I sort of kept it almost a secret from the designers themselves. But then very slowly through our review process, we brought in some elements of the original car, which were just enough for it to be recognized by the original fans. But it was new enough to bring a new generation of fans and customers to that product. So it's very risky that you're trying to make the old die-hard guys happy and then you piss off everyone else who's coming to the brand. So I said, yes, it should be recognizable by the original fan base, but it must bring in new people to our brand. But it should always stand for what the original stood for. So I'm sure if we drop the Sierra into Bombay, even today, with all the modern cars around, it would be a showstopper, as it turned out to be when we showed it in Delhi. So that's how we dealt with that problem, Sam.
That's a
So
very,
don't tell the
very
designers what they're
smart
designing all the
approach.
time.
I've only got a couple more questions for you, Pratap.
Sure.
The first thing is, you highlighted earlier on the importance of treating people with respect, being good to everybody, and just basically not being a dick.
Yeah.
I wonder have there been any particular mentors or role models in your career that you would care to mention, and what and how they inspired you?
I think the biggest one is, of course, Mr. Tata himself. Whatever contact I've had with him has been through design reviews, and I think he stands for something that the Tata Group stands for. Which is humility, which is humanness. In fact, in all our design work, Sam, even when I'm designing an SUV with the team, we always talk about strength and not about aggression. I think there's so much aggression in the world out there. We talk about strong design, and strong doesn't need to be aggressive. There's a huge difference. So while sometimes the marketing guys will come in a brief and say, oh, it has to be aggressive, it has to beat this, it has to beat that, this product, and it has to fight. The way they describe a product is almost like a war, Whereas, I tone it down, bring it back, and we talk about strength, and that stands on its own feet. You don't need to kill or beat or bash anyone to be strong. So that's the approach, I take. So Mr. Tata is one huge inspiration, but purely in design terms, one of the designers of the...
No. I'm talking about character very much, not necessarily design terms, but in character.
Oh yeah, so character. I think I joined, and Sam, you would have heard, people choose their bosses and not the job. I wanted to work for, Mr. Tata. I know I wouldn't work for him directly, but I wanted to work for that ethos, which really struck a chord. I mean, the reason for being in business is very different from other groups. So that was one. Second, I think very important person, Olivier Boulay. He's the kind of guy who gets a lot into strategy. He was always thinking how Mercedes-Benz could widen its appeal, how we could, bring things that they weren't thinking about in Sindelfingen, because, you're in Tokyo and you have access to how Asia is thinking. I really understood and learned a lot about, strategy from him. I think that was fundamental, and not to give up easily. You keep pushing. He did the Maybach, I think, a long before its time, and today Maybach is a pretty strong, brand in Mercedes-Benz, beyond the S-Class. And he had done the original Maybach with Anthony Lowe, in the 90s. So I think that visionary way of questioning things, questioning the norm. I really like that about his character, Olivier Boulay. And I would say, these are the two fundamental people. And one of my colleagues in Piaggio, Riccardo Minuti, he designed when the Vespa came back, the ET2 and the ET4. I saw the way he approached it, and it goes back to this retro, bringing back a legend. He didn't approach it. He didn't have the original Vespa sitting in front of his desk and then drawing it, as they show in the publicity movies. He just designed a great modern scooter for Italy, and the world. And it happens to have that shape, but there's not a single thing about it that goes back to the past. In fact, even the engine layout is different, right? The original had the engine on the wheel. This one is, of course, central, longitudinal, like a Lambretta, actually, funnily enough. But the way he approached it, not getting trapped in retro, but still staying true to the product. I think these three people, I would say, they're characters, and you have to fight for things. It's not easy. A lot of people may look at me or the other guys and ladies you bring in your podcast and think that, wow, they're so lucky. Believe me, underneath the surface, you're paddling like mad. So nothing's easy. You got to fight for it all. But find a person to work for. I think that's very important, at least in the initial part of your career. If you really see that there's a role model in a company you would like to work for, go and target that person, him or her. Because that can change your life. It really can. So that's what I would sort of say. Choose a company
Great
later.
advice. Pratap, the very last question. We always end off on advice for young students. I think I'm going to focus it more a little bit on let's use Indian students, for example, that might not, as was the case with you, didn't necessarily have the means to go and study in overseas, for example. What advice would you give them starting out today in that environment?
Yeah, I think never give up on, if you think you're good enough, don't give up on your dreams. I think that's fundamental. You can almost visualize your future. Sam, I find this very funny, but it's true. You can almost visualize where you want to be, and if you believe in it strong enough, work towards it, you'll get there. The other thing is, never hesitate in asking, because the worst that can happen is someone will say no. Take that chance, especially early on, like you're saying, students. If suppose I had said, I don't know Italian, I've never designed a scooter, I don't know if I can be away from home and the comforts of home. No, you take the chance, and you have to believe in yourself and believe in your ability. And take that plunge. You have nothing to lose. Look, had my 6 months stage not gone well, I would have come back to India, right? Nothing to lose. But what you'll stand to gain if you pull it off is incredible. The same thing with the scholarship at RCA. First is to get into the RCA. You have to have that belief that there is a place for me there, and then you apply for the scholarship. Again, you have to imagine it to happen, but work towards it and don't give up. What's the worst that could happen? You wouldn't get it. The job in Mitsubishi and then Mercedes, when Daimler Chrysler and Mitsubishi split up in 2004, Olivier went back to the Mercedes-Benz studio, and I just sent him a note saying, I really enjoyed working that 1 year with you at Mitsubishi. Is there a possibility of working in Mercedes-Benz? He writes back, there was in fact a possibility. So if you don't ask, you don't know. So ask. After that, meeting this gentleman in an auto show in India, and then just walking up to him, because I knew he was a managing director of Tata Motors. I walked up to him and I said, look, I'd like to work for your company. Can I meet Mr. Tata? What's the worst he could have said? He could have laughed at me and said, are you nuts? I don't even know you from Adam. But no, he sees something in you, hopefully, and arranges that 30 minutes with Mr. Tata, which is the 30 most important minutes of your life. So, one thing leads to the other, but you've got to take the chance when you can take the chance and believe in your abilities. And, I think later on in life, as you have, family, kids, other sort of, let's say, mortgages, etc., you become a lot less mobile. You're able to take lesser risk with your life and your career. But at the starting, go anywhere. I mean, today the world is your oyster. You can work in China, you can work in Europe, you can work in the US. So if you're a designer from India, you've done well in one of the good colleges, which there are many. There weren't in my time. There are many more now. Aim to be the best in that. Understand what a designer can bring to a brand. Choose your boss and then go for it. And like I said, the worst that can happen is someone says no. So take the chance, believe in your ability, and go for it.
Pratap, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. You're an absolute gentleman, and we're gonna have a bunch of kids going crazy for this. So thank you very much.
So happy.
Thanks.
So happy.